Welcome to Old Man Blerd. Hi, I'm John, and along with my friend Terrance, we make up a pair of lifelong geeks who happen to be black, over 50, but are certainly nerds first and foremost. The Alpha Geek and the Omega Freak. And we welcome everyone. And by everyone, we mean nerds, blerds, and bleaks, cosplayers and role players, geeks and freaks, Marvel zombies and distinguished competitors, Trekkies, Star Warriors, Batmaniacs, and Spider fans, Warhams, Whovians, AFOLs, adult fans of Legos, Tolkienites, Weeaboos, Supernatural hunters and otakus, Ava geeks, Bro stars and Sistars, Pokemon trainers, Potterheads, Bronies, Whovians, Browncoats, and Scoobies, and all nerd properties in between. Because we are over 50, we've seen a thing or two and have experience, long experience, with a lot of these properties. So thank you for listening to Old Man Blerd.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, there you are. Look at that gray-haired old man.
Ouch. Ouch. Ouch.
There was a period of time where I remember watching Sanford and Son and looking at Grady and going, man, that guy, he must be old. And now I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh my goodness, my beard is entirely gray. I'm like, oh, I have become Grady.
Well, at least you become Grady. I've been accused of being Fred, so there you go.
Oh, well, there you go. Grady was pretty funny, dude. How are you, sir?
Well, I just got done talking to my uncle. That's why I didn't answer right away.
Oh, no problem. Ladies and
He
gentlemen,
just called to
welcome.
say hi.
Oh, nice. Hi. Hi, Uncle.
Yeah.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Old Man Blerd, where we two elder statesmen of the Blerd world
Experience.
experienced get to share our experience of all things sort of pop culture, nerd culture, etc. And with our particularly aged point of view. So,
What? Motto, brother.
there it is. What? It's been a bit since we talked. What nerd things have you been up to in the last, I don't know, couple weeks?
Yeah, it's literally been 2 weeks.
Yes.
Last week, I went to the Rocky Mountain Nightmare. I saw Michael Ironside.
Oh, nice. I just always think of him in Scanners.
That's exactly what I got on him about. I said, you messed me up as a child.
Yes, you warped.
He said, what? What? I say, yes, you did. He says, it's not my fault. Your
Scanners.
parents took you to the drive-in.
Yeah, he just looks positively evil and just malevolent, using his telekinesis to destroy that person's whole
Yeah,
thing.
that's why I told him. He's like, it's not my fault. Just blame your parents.
Question is, if I recall, it's been decades since I've seen Scanners. Scanners, ladies and gentlemen, there was a period of time where psychic telekinetic powers were huge in movies like Firestarter and all that sort of thing. The psychic, I forgot there was another one where a guy had psychic powers and made a tilt-a-whirl kind of fly off the tracks. It was back in the 70s as well. I don't remember what that one, The Prophecy? I don't know what it was called. Anyways.
No, I know what you're talking about because I mean, Carrie was in the same vein, and when you
Yeah,
look at it in a way,
Carrie. Which is funny because the only time you see that kind of stuff in terms of psychic powers now and kids destroying things is in anime, like Mob Psycho, or there's always like some psychic powered kid that's doing crazy things. But I guess I'm assuming that was all influenced by 70s, early 80s things like Scanners. So
well,
Michael Ironside holding it
yeah.
down.
And the other thing was that if you think about it, Scanners was the first public, I guess you could say, Beyonder or Supernatural, as far as there were Scanners, and then there was Highlanders, which he also did.
Yeah, he
because
actually
as a community of these powered beings. Is what I'm trying to say.
sure.
Because scanners, they have a community. Yeah.
Well, I think that Michael Ironside, to his credit, is he was kind of like the Benedict Cumberbatch of the early '80s, late '70s. He was in Total Recall. He was in I'm trying to think of what other sort of nerd
Starship Troopers.
property. Huh?
Starship Troopers.
It's been a bit since I've seen Star Trek Troopers, and it was only one of those things where I saw, I think, once. I mean,
Yeah,
I
he
saw it
was
was
one of the
fun. I
sergeant
mean,
or captain.
it's kind of
He's one of
funny
them.
funny that people are like, Starship Troopers, that's a satire? It's like, yes, a little bit. Making fun of the Nazis, which I think everyone should do regularly. Make fun of Nazis. Um, yeah, so I mean, Michael Ironside was in quite a bit of stuff there for a bit that was kind of off the beaten path. He wasn't in RoboCop, was he? No.
No, he wasn't in RoboCop.
No, the guy
That's
that
one
played
of the ones he
Red
didn't do.
in the guy that played Red in that '70s show, he was the main bad guy in RoboCop.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And he
Robo
surprisingly is a geek too. He's surprisingly a geek too.
Oh, I think so. Well, all those old school character actors, they didn't care. They did sci-fi, they did fantasy. They didn't really. Nobody was as sort of snooty about those things. Now everybody's snooty. It's like, oh, you're in a superhero film. That's not actual art, you
Well, I
know.
understand what you mean.
Whereas,
As much as I like Guy Pearce, he was saying that when he did the time machine, it was he needed to do something light. I'm like,
sure,
wow, you just call that light. I'm not saying it should be heavy like Shakespeare or anything, but you call it light, like a gumdrop or something. I mean,
right? Do you know? Speaking of time, I think there's a new Time Bandits coming, ladies and gentlemen. If you have not seen Time Bandits, do yourself a favor. After this podcast, rent Time Bandits. Actually, it's probably on any number of the free streaming services like Zubi or Tubi or Newbie or.
maybe, because you know how they like to take stuff on and off.
I think I saw Time Bandits. Did Terry Gilliam do that from Monty
Yep,
Python?
yep.
You sure? Because
As
I it feels very Terry Gilliam. It feels
and,
very
and so
Fisher
was
King and Brazil. It feels very much Terry Gilliam's sweet spot. Time
yeah, he
Bandits.
did that, and John Cleese was in it,
Yeah, there was
and
a lot
Sean
of
Connery was in it.
yeah. Mom, Dad, don't touch that. That's concentrated evil.
Yeah, that didn't last long.
Yeah. Yes. So that's what you. So you saw Michael Ironside. That was your nerd couple of weeks.
That was last week. Now this week, I went to
Yeah.
the Retro Mania.
Okay. How was that? Who was there?
I saw the ruler of my childhood.
Okay, ruler of your childhood. This is a tall, an extremely important person. Who was it?
Sid and Marty Croft.
Oh, that's right. HR Puffin stuff and Sigmund and the Sea Monster and
Yep,
all of
yep,
that sort of stuff.
yep.
Yeah, I think the first time I ever sort of had a kind of crush was what was it, Dyna Girl? What was the? Oh, you're muted, I think. Terrence, I think you may be muted. Or are you just changing positions? So I'll play in the fill-in music while Terrence gets unmuted. Dull and tan and long and lovely, the girl from Ipanema. Oh, he's back.
Yeah, phone call. I just kind of let it ring out.
Oh, that's no problem. So what was it? A Dyna Girl? What was the?
Yeah, Electro Woman and Dinah Girl.
What was it? Electra
Uh,
Woman?
Electro Woman and Dinah Girl. It had Deidre Hall from Days of Our Lives.
Yes. And I had,
Had Dr. Shrinker.
I think I had a little bit of a crush on her. I think. When,
Then they had Dr. Shrinker had Jay Robinson, which was interesting to me because Jay Robinson was one of a handful of actors like Jonathan Harris
uh-huh.
who spoke proper, and you always thought they were English, but actually they were from like Queens or somewhere else.
They just used a proper English sort of
Yeah.
accent. That's fine.
Oh,
Fine.
yeah, they were so good at it. It's just like, wow, guys.
Okay. Well, And now it's flipped. It's like everybody's British and they're just putting on American accents or Australian.
Yeah.
putting on
Oh, sorry.
putting um so who else was there? So Sid, did you get an autograph from Sid?
Dang right, Skippy.
Nice. What on your VHS of HR and Puffin stuff or something?
No, no, I got an actual picture, and I
Oh,
have
no.
it on Banana Splits. Because
Oh
you ever
gosh.
seen the Banana Splits horror movie?
Yes. The
I
horror,
told him, I
not the horror movie. I definitely watched the Banana Splits show when I was a kid. See, that's
well, yeah,
okay, old man Blerd moment. That's the funny thing about back in the day is you had a situation where there were very limited windows when you could watch children's television. So it made it sort of special. Like right now, you can just, as a kid, you can just turn on something all day, every day. There's a Disney Channel. There's, any number of streaming services. There used to be, you had to wait at certain periods in the afternoon after
about three
school,
o'clock to about
about
5.
about 3 o'clock, or you had to wait for Saturday morning, and that was it. And so I remember the Banana Split show because the Banana Split show arguably was already in syndication by the time I came around because I feel like the Banana Split show was like 68 to 72 or something. 73
Yeah,
maybe.
it was
And
something like that.
and so I started seeing it like at 75, 76, and it was already done. I mean, they were driving
And
little dune buggies and
mm-hmm.
doing and playing
and
inch high. Didn't they play like they basically played Hanna Barbera cartoons, didn't they?
yeah,
So it'd be like Inch High Private Eye and Squiggly Wiggly and
mm-hmm.
Winsome Witch and Dick
Yeah,
Dastardly and Grape Ape, Magilla Gorilla. I could go
yep.
on. I could, ladies and gentlemen, I could go on. And I was in terms of the cartoon hierarchy, I think Warner Brothers first, Hanna-Barbera next, and then Disney. Because see, Mickey Mouse had been trash for a real long time.
Yeah,
I
about
mean,
that.
there's a new set of Mickey Mouse, new-ish set of Mickey Mouse cartoons that actually won some awards, and they basically went and did Tex Avery style, early couple seasons of SpongeBob, uh, Ren and Stimpy style animation where they get crazy close-ups and things like that. Uh, so and it
Well,
did
it's
and it was
also
really
like
good, but that's the only Mickey Mouse that has been tolerable. I mean, and it's great. I mean, I think it's just the Adventures of Mickey Mouse or it's some, but you can see it on Disney and they won awards for the last, I guess it probably started in 2020, 2021, somewhere in there. Pretty good.
mm-hmm.
Not like the 3D. I'm telling you, it's Ren and Stimpy as Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and Goofy. It's
Well, see,
bananas.
but you also got to remember is that Eeyore is manic depression.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Duck is anger management.
Sure.
Daisy is a strong-willed woman because she's the only one who can control him.
Sure. They have a lot of. If you check out that new Mickey Mouse show, I don't know. Again, I can't. I feel like it's just called The Adventures of Mickey Mouse, or maybe just Mickey Mouse. And they go into it. It's like they actually totally go into how dysfunctional Daisy and Donald's relationship is, and how he's just a loose cannon, and she's right there with him, kind of being a loose-ish cannon. And they hate how lovey-dovey Mickey and Minnie are, and get a kick when they actually see them argue. It's pretty funny.
And then Piglet is high anxiety.
Piglet from
Pig,
Pooh?
yeah, think about it.
Actually, I think that the Winnie the Pooh characters have been, like many comic properties, have been broken down into the seven deadly sins. So there's sloth and wrath, and I think that that's been fairly well documented, like which of the Pooh characters represent which um, seven deadly sins, because
Oh, I agree.
everything just traces back to seven.
Because we were just actually talking about more of the mental differences, if you will.
Yeah,
Rabbit is OCD.
sure.
You know, just like Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse are both narcissists, but they're the good kind of narcissists, as in they're like you're part of their pack, so they'll protect you.
Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
Hold on one second. Just someone going in and out the door. Um, so that was your nerd week. I should probably express what my nerd week was. Um, my nerd week was this week. It was all checking out the new Doctor Who. There's like three new episodes of the new Doctor, and I do like the new Doctor and the new companion. I think it's great. He is a bit of a more emotional, like I don't know, I guess you would call it a more weepy Doctor Who more than other doctors. You know, he tends to be emotional in that way.
Hmm.
Um, but it's good. I check it out. I maybe we'll have to do a review after if you get a chance to see them. That
I
was
will.
this week. Last week I was like many Americans captivated by the beef. Kendrick Lamar versus uh Drake. I think that was
Oh,
that was the beef that I was. I mean, it was. I like Kendrick Lamar. I mean, hip hop is one of the many genres of music I like, and I tend to be a snob about it. I tend to go old school with having to actually have lyrics rather than
ouch.
rather than just repeating the same phrase that rhymes with trigger. Um, so I, I,
Touche.
yeah, I tend to actually like lyrical content, which is why uh, I like Kendrick. I don't care for Drake. Drake, I think that Drake has. Man, okay, hot take. Man, someone's gonna catch some. The next thing you know, I'm gonna be in the beef record. Um, I feel like Drake does a lot of performative blackness. You know, like it's like you're from Toronto. How is it that you're acting quote unquote more street than my relatives that live in South Central? I, I'm not buying it. I'm not I'm not buying it. I'm harder than Drake and I'm from Colorado. So
Wow.
that is the hottest take I'll make. But see, the thing about it is I was around for the OG beefs, the real Roxanne versus UTFO beefs, the Cool Mo D versus LL Cool J beefs. I mean, the old beefs. Like for me, the Johnny Come Lately of beefs was, Ice Cube versus Easy E. Or Death Row Records versus, Tupac. I mean, or, that whole thing. Just, yeah, no. Hmm.
Wow.
Well, not Death Row versus Tupac, but Tupac versus everybody that had, I guess it would have been, I guess it was Biggie at that point. Yeah, it was Biggie. What am I thinking? So for me,
Yes.
that was a fairly new beef. It's not very nerdy. I mean, it is nerdy. It's just the
Musical
nerd
nerd.
it's musical hip hop head nerdy. And, ding ding, I think Kendrick won that beef. But again, for those of you young people out there, take a listen to the real Roxanne UTFO uh, beefs of back in the day. Matter of fact, I actually have Ego Trip's book of rap lists, and it talks about the beefs. Yeah, that was Sparky D versus Roxanne Shante. Yeah, there was plenty of beefs, and then there was the Juice Crew versus Boogie Down Productions. That was one too. JJ Fad versus Roxanne Shante. There was Third Base versus MC Hammer. There's been some beefs. But this beef has gotten to the point where NPR and Elon Musk are talking about. So it's dead. It's over. No, once you once NPR is talking about your beef and your underground hip hop beef, it's kind of over. It's kind of
Oh,
so
come on. They got a Mortal Kombat mod.
yeah, right. I'm sure there's some Fortnite skins coming and commerce. It just always swallows up everything. So kind of nerdy there. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, there's a bunch of One Piece stuff that's been happening that I've been super into. Um,
Cool.
Fallout seems to they kind of did some weird stuff with some Fallout stuff, so that was a nerdy thing that I was up to. And I think I tried to dip a toe into the X-Men, which is in the fall of the House of X and another sort of big paradigm shift for the X-Men because they just can't leave our merry mutants well enough alone.
Now they get.
No, they can't. They just are always like, well, that was working, but oh, and I was in the nerd world of X-Men 97, which has been an entertaining watch.
Hmm.
I don't know, you should check it out. Have you seen any of those episodes? I think it's on
No.
Disney. Um,
Well, so is the
so
doctor.
yeah, so is the
So is
Doctor Who. It's like basically Disney owns all of it. It's like the Doctor Who, X-Men, Marvel, Star Wars, the whole kit and caboodle. I did start trying to watch the Orville again. Did the Orville get canceled?
not completely yet.
Huh. But it's been a
You
couple
know.
years since they did anything with it, I think.
Right, right. And to be honest, it's like a lot of shows, they don't have to truly cancel it. They just might have to go to animations. They're going to do a sequel or whatever.
Yeah, they could just release a Christmas special or something. I mean, the Orville really found its legs after it stopped trying to be funny. I mean, there was a while there where it was like it wanted to be the funny next gen, and then it just said, let's just be next gen and have some jokes occasionally, which was better.
Right.
It was better, and there was some real stakes involved with uh, some of the characters and the war that they sort of unleashed, and I was like, oh, you're doing really good stuff here. Um, let's see,
And we
I
want to see
guess,
the end of it.
yeah, right, and I think the last nerdy thing is, well, it's sports nerd, but I've been watching playoff hockey. I mean,
Oh,
people
well,
would
that's
be
good.
like, oh, that's not very nerdy, John. That's a sport. Sport is not nerdy. Trust
Yes,
me.
it is.
Trust me. Anything with statistics is nerdy. And there's a lot of statistics. It's like, ooh, how many shots on goal for under on this form of ice in this arena with this pairing? It's like, come on, that's nerdy. Sports people are just nerds that think they're not nerds and maybe don't have glasses.
Wow. And didn't follow their dreams beyond high school.
Yes. Well, if I hadn't had that knee injury in '85, I'd have gone pro. No, you wouldn't have.
Mm.
No, you wouldn't have.
Just
And
like
it's
me, I would have been an adventurer. It wasn't for that golf cart they hit me a couple years ago.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, no, you having the knee injury in high school preventing you from pro is the same as someone saying who'd win in a fight, Molecule Man or Galactus. It's like, come on, no, it's a nerd thing. All things are nerd things. But yes, so in short, my nerdiness has been exploring the Beef Wars, a little bit of X-Men '97, and the new Doctor Who, which I've appreciated, and Fallout. So
Cool.
yeah. So I know that we've had a couple of little conversational topics that we've wanted to talk about. One of which was, I think, the dangers of being a geek. Did we ever talk about that?
No.
Oh, well, we're going to. There was the dangers of being a geek. I think we did a little bit because it was Danger, Will Robinson talked about
Right.
some dangers of being a geek. But then there was also like, how innocence has been destroyed by a lack of suspension of belief. That was also another thing we wanted to discuss.
Well, the problem we have is that sometimes now it, people grow up, and that's a
Sure.
bad thing in our arena because in their growing up, they think they have to no longer enjoy or see it for what it was without condemning it. Because
Sure.
it's like they'll say about some shows or whatever. Well, like they'll say white savior syndrome.
Hmm.
From the old, and it's like, well, was it fun? Well, yeah, and we don't care as white. I mean, if you want to do a sequel, let them have a son or daughter of another race. Okay, I don't care.
Hmm.
I mean, just want to enjoy the show. Or like they be talking mainly about women when it comes to their clothing. Again, there are some cultures they wear less than any of the stuff they want to complain about. But
Well,
again, we're
that's
just trying to see.
yeah. Well, I think that's the what is
We're
it?
escaping.
The elephant in the room, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, or whatever, however you do it.
Yeah.
Is yeah that we just constantly, as much as we don't want to talk nonstop about woke or this or woke that, or but it's like it just seems to be so incessant now. It's like I think there was a I guess the new Assassin's Creed has a black character and a woman
Yes, I saw the preview.
ninja, and people are going, well, it's maybe based on Yasuke, or who was like a historical figure, and people are super mad because how dare you uh, insert black people in my fictional universe. um how dare
You know
you,
what about
there were
that?
no such thing as black elves. Yeah, there's also no such thing as elves, but whatever.
Like I say, you know what I have to say about that. That's all I have to say.
So yeah, I
Because
mean,
what I
I
have to
hate.
say will get us thrown off the air. So,
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. But I mean, it's just like we are constantly always having to revisit these topics, and it's just like, get over it, let it go. Just enjoy the stuff you enjoy. But I do think that there is a quality of the innocence that somehow that is being destroyed to sort of appreciate some of this stuff. I mean, you do have to, at a certain point, whatever it may be, whatever movie it is, just give yourself to it. Like you just have to go, okay, I'm gonna give myself to the three body problem. Let's just go there. And you do. It's not entirely like you suspend your reason or anything, but you do just sort of say, okay, I'm going to allow myself to be transported to this fictional place. And some people just have a hard time when it's a science fictional place or it's a fantasy fictional place. They're okay with a crime fictional place, or I mean, when you watch like a Fast and Furious movie and they're wrecking a car out of a skyscraper to go through to another skyscraper, I mean, there you are suspending some of your belief in physics, I think.
Oh yeah, because they have a YouTube channel that exactly has episode. What if Fast and the Furious was real? And like half the characters die doing the stunts.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I
I
mean,
mean, it's like, these are, immovable objects occasionally running into, irresistible forces. You know, it- so I don't know. I think, yeah, I don't know. I probably misquoted my physics trying to make a joke, but still, there are some real, actual physical laws that don't
there are
necessarily.
consequences.
There are consequences. There are consequences. You can't break the first law of thermodynamics. I mean, there are consequences to some of these laws in physics and such. And it's just very interesting that some people, they can suspend their belief when it comes to, I don't know, a magic ring destroying all of created reality, but they just can't quite make it like, oh, I don't know, black elves. That's a bridge too far.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the same thing, but it goes beyond that. It's the same thing with corporate. They want our money, but they want
Sure,
to destroy our stories.
sure,
And I mean, that's the best way to put it.
sure.
Because certain characters, I have no problem with their race, sexuality, or anything, as I've said 100 times, and will again, organically.
Hmm.
But when they sit up there and go against where, like, you make a black character be a Green Lantern, cool. But you do it in the South during the Klan,
Hmm.
that's going to be a little problematic.
Sure,
Not because of me, not because of the character or suspension of belief, but we know that person's going to be America's most wanted times 1,000
sure.
because they're not going to let them run around with that much power during that time period
Well,
and have that view.
I am curious that, just as an aside, I am curious how the new Doctor is going to approach that. He does go back to the 60s, uh, but it has nothing to do with race whatsoever. It's just they're going back to the 60s to check out the Beatles, which, is kind of cool. And all kinds of action ensues. But yeah, I was like, oh no, they're gonna go back to the 60s because some of us have read an occasional history book or have relatives who've told us about the 60s and not always taking too kindly to those of a
Our
darker
Hugh,
persuasion. Yes, those of a darker persuasion. So was worried that they were gonna. Oh, it's like already. It's like just the third episode or the second episode or whatever. And they didn't do it. They just kind of told their story and didn't touch on that piece of it, and even had a musical number in it, which was kind of an interesting. I think first. I don't remember any other musical numbers in Doctor Who. Do you?
Goblin song,
Huh?
Goblin song.
When was that?
That's the Christmas special last year when they introduced him.
Oh, well, yes, I guess so. That's two for him then. That's right. So,
And
I
then the
mean,
time maker too, the toy maker with Neil
yeah,
Patrick Harris.
yep, that's also true. Yeah, so they're hitting the musical numbers a little hard, I guess. I had forgotten. I was just thinking, had they done anything beyond this Doctor, and they hadn't. But I've enjoyed the occasional. Oh, excuse me. An occasional musical number. I don't know where that yawn came from. Obviously, some
Yeah.
other time and space place.
Well, see, that's what gets me though. It's not just race. I mean, yes, I'm a DC freak, but I mean, somebody was getting upset once about crypto. And they go, well, it's stupid to have a dog. And it's like three things. One, we respect your opinion, but respect that it exists. Just don't read it. There you go. Easy. Two, you're a scientist and you understand your only child in the depths of the darkness of space without testing to see if something else. That's how crypto came to be. You know,
Well, and
by
I think
sending a dog in a in a test probe.
and that
And
goes
then
back. Go on.
I'm just saying, and it's little things like that that ruin it for us all as in micro aggressions in that sense.
Micromanaging the lore.
Yeah,
Uh,
just complaining about little stupid like they were complaining about Supergirl's outfit. If
sure.
you know anything about Supergirl, she's gone through 20 outfits. Hello.
Yeah. Well,
Some more risque than others, some more practical than others.
sure.
But that's the character.
Sure.
I mean, just she's basically like Iron Man or Batman as far as outfits.
Yeah. That's true. Well, I think the thing about Superman, and this is something that they've had a difficult time doing with Superman, is that the Silver Age Superman was zany. And I think that Grant Morrison really appreciated the zaniness of old school Silver Age Superman. Like Golden Age Superman, he was, fighting slumlords and still wasn't actually flying. Silver Age Superman, he was flying and he had weird costumes and, he's going through all these absolutely absurd lengths to prevent Lois from finding out his secret identity. And then that's when you got like the cryptos and what's the Wonder Horse? There was a horse in there.
Comet, Comet,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
not in Kryptonian.
yeah. So,
It's a centaur. He's a
yeah,
centaur for crying out loud.
yeah, it was the equivalent. They did for Superman what the equivalent Bronze Age did for Spider-Man, where sometimes it was like, oh, now he has 6 arms and he's fighting Morbius. Oh, now he's got the spider buggy. Every now
Yeah,
and
and
then,
I mean,
I think what the reason why people really balk at that stuff is, I think this hot take coming, old man Blerd hot take coming. I think it reminds them that kids read this. And I think adults really don't want to be reminded they're reading stuff that kids actually are reading. And maybe, arguably, could be for. Because that Superman stuff in the Silver Age, they're not, they were writing it for kids. They really, really were.
yeah,
They didn't care. There was no need. These continuity nerds, these, sort of micromanaging continuity and lore. That's not what kids do. Kids are like, I'm going to read this issue. I spent a dime for it. I spent 15 cents for it. I'm going to read it. He's going to beat up the guy in the weird suit, and then it's going to reset to the status quo in the very next issue, because that's what I'm going to do next month. I'm going to read him beating up another weird dude, and that's all that they did. This notion of continuity almost was kind of born, probably born and destroyed by Crisis on Infinite Earths, wouldn't you say?
yeah. And also the other part with which you're not addressing to a degree is that what you say is absolutely true, and that's what attacks us as far as being able to just enjoy it. And what I mean is, yeah, like they made Pink Kryptonite, they made Superman gay. That was a parody, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I mean, again, some people, well, I'm offended. Don't read it, you
Sure.
know.
And you always have the choice not to participate in these pop culture things. But I think that it's all because we're trying to chase away the void, the hellhound on our trail of mortality and possibly environmental collapse. There you go. So people are like going to just obsess about Stellar Blade's costume, or the new Assassin's Creed's race. I remember seeing a meme that was like, you're upset by the woman and the black man in Assassin's Creed. I'm upset by the paywall that Ubisoft is creating. We are not the same. And that's my point. It's like, yeah, maybe worry more about the capitalism that's trying to corrupt the game than the quote unquote woke stuff that they're putting into the game. Care more
Oh yeah,
about that.
entirely. Because even my father plays his phone game. They got a commercial almost every third round,
Yeah.
and he's playing bingo.
Yeah. And so to me, it's like, maybe care more about that stuff. But, you know, because I do think that's part of it, is that prior to the adultification of comics, there really wasn't that much of a concern of continuity. I mean, you would make sure that maybe Doctor Doom or Magneto didn't die in the previous issue, so you could bring him back in 5 or 6 issues. But there wasn't that kind of real stringent form of continuity, and so one part of the innocence being destroyed was actually some of these sort of you know policing of lore and policing of continuity. That couldn't have happened because in issue 275, it's like, and so this all falls on your DC folks, because this falls on probably the beginning of the end was a Flash of Two Worlds.
Well, I totally agree. But see, the best way to put it is that people need to think like Highlander. Highlander is the best example. You could like Highlander 1, stop.
Sure.
Highlander 1, 2, stop. Highlander 1, skip over 2, go to 3, stop.
Sure.
And just do it. And that's what they have to understand with all of them, because what you say is absolutely true. There's a certain point that why we say eras, why we talk about writers and even artists, but more writers because they're the ones that actually control the story. Artists as far as style,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean there's stuff that you're trying to enjoy. Like I love Star Lord when he originally
Mm-hmm.
was in Marvel. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like the one from the movie. Because James Gunn, he didn't like it because it's too similar to Star Wars, but I liked it because it made sense to me. You know,
Sure, sure.
and I'm saying they keep changing stuff, and I'm not talking about the continuity. I'm not talking about movie versus comic. I'm still referring to the critic who can't let you enjoy. That's what really irks sometimes.
sure.
You know,
And I think that everybody sort of probably needs to take a break from the sort of pundit class, the critic class of this is no good, stop buying it, or this is great, that whole thing. You know,
Well, the
I
problem
think
we have is what we are at this moment. What you and I'm doing is the problem we have, and we are part of the problem. I mean, podcasting, as in influencers,
hmm
because some of them they have forgotten. They're so busy making a buck, they forgot about how enjoying and stop worshiping the God opinion.
sure, sure. But I mean, I think a lot of this really has to do with people, a certain vague societal depression. I think there's a lot of things going on in the world that are about, politics and Gaza and the presidential election and environmental devastation and you name it. There's all these things that are real heavy that people feel powerless to do, but they can feel empowered by expressing their displeasure about some form of pop culture minutia.
Oh yeah, I totally agree, and that's what people seem to forget about why we have superheroes is because the law doesn't always work. So that's why we have to know that somewhere is some making a difference. I mean, to a degree, that's the same reason why Saw, as in Jigsaw, was supported for that same very thing. It just got to a point that it got ridiculous. I got a speeding ticket, so you wind up in a trap.
Sure, sure. But I
People want to
mean,
see firm but fair. They don't want to just keep seeing firm because, to a degree, that system has that one extreme or the other. They either are too firm
mhm,
or not firm enough.
sure. Well, I feel like the one sort of fandom that seems to not have that. I mean, there's degrees. I feel like sort of the worst policing of the lore and continuity would probably be a tie between Star Wars and comic books, I think. You know, and
Mhm.
I think those are about tied. I don't feel like people really, I feel like Star Trek it doesn't bend out of its continuity that much. So I guess it probably is fairly safe. Um,
Right.
so they don't have to worry about that as much. Um, but I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe versus comics, or the DC Cinematic Universe versus comics, and new writer teams and from comic to comic, there's a lot of people policing that stuff. And Star Wars, the lore is really deep in the books, um, but um, in the movies where they try to borrow some from the books, or the television shows they try to borrow some of the books, I think there's the lore police get out on that stuff. So those are the two clearly
But
most troublesome when it comes to this kind of allowing their innocence to be sort of swallowed by uh my dog, goodness
pettiness.
gracious. Yes,
Petty. Petty.
by pettiness. I mean, because I do think you do have to. I mean, sometimes you can just. I wish we could get to a place where you could just appreciate a medium without getting super into that. I feel like the Godzilla folks, they're probably the best. The kaiju fans, they don't
I
seem to
know. I'm
go,
one.
yeah, they don't. The kaiju fans, the real hardcore kaiju fans, don't seem to go, ugh, that's not. I mean, they dislike certain Godzillas because, some of them have been dumb. But they
Well, no.
don't.
I mean, best example of what you're saying, going on the path that you're saying, is Godzilla, Dracula, Sherlock Holmes, and to a degree now Frankenstein,
hmm
which is that these characters, while not necessarily public domain, Godzilla,
hmm
they are allowed to have different variations, and you can have your own little variation that you love.
hmm
And you can't do that so much with superheroes. I mean, they tried to do it more with Spider-Man with the multiverse, Spider-Verse, and they try to do it to the degree of Superman. But as a whole, you can't just enjoy because I mean, sometimes you want to be brutal because
Hmm.
you had a bad day, and sometimes you wanted to be, you know, butterflies and buttercups. And some people won't let you just have that because of their moment. And what people don't understand is, as fans, we all want to enjoy it, and we want everybody to enjoy. But like I said, and I'll say it till I die, I don't appreciate someone coming in with a sledgehammer because I like something that they don't think, and I should be forced in their mind to enjoy it.
Yeah.
'Cause
Hold on one
that's
second. I'm going to have to handle this dog. Hold on one sec. All right. Sorry about that. I had to give my dog a treat, and then now he's somewhat content. But you were saying that, um,
yeah. I'm saying, trying to get here. Hello.
yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, yeah. I was saying that it's like when they did Superman, underwear in, underwear out. People go, it's childish. Like you don't appreciate the history of the character, then shut up. There you go.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
he was
and
supposed to be a circus performer in a costume. You don't appreciate it. There you go. Simple.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that the part of the problem, which I understand some of the continuity police, the lore police's issues, are have to do with the fact that, you could just put in a real brief thing about a young Clark seeing a muscle man wearing the tights and the boots.
Yeah. You
And then
could.
just be like, oh, he just thought that would be cool. And I think the
I mean,
part
they
of
actually did that in a black and white, not black and white, a paperback from a few years ago. They did exactly that. They made it take place in the 30s, and he was working like in the radio industry, just coming along. And
hmm
long story be short, he was getting ready to find himself as Superman,
hmm
and was a couple things like he was hanging around a hobo.
hmm
And why it was interesting about the hobo is first I brought him down in humility, but the other part is the hobo kept on asking him to do things like stare at a cigarette because he knew that he would light up heat vision.
hmm
Yeah. He was getting him to use his powers so he'd become comfortable. I
hmm
mean, these things you wouldn't think of because his mother died, and the father died in the end because he never went back to visit him because it was playing off of him basically being as a kid, he needed them. But as his powers grew, they became more alienated
hmm
from the fear of what is he? I mean, it's it's interesting, like I said, how they can do different variations and appreciate that. And that's again, as you say, the consistency police, they complain, but one of the characters he ran into was Saturn or Saucer Man,
hmm
hence the S, and he modified the costume a little bit to make it Superman.
Sure. And now they have it as like it's a symbol of hope in Kryptonian, I guess, is the way that the S is or something. Um,
Yeah, that was Smallville, and that was. I mean, it goes to agree with hierarchies and castles and stuff like that. It's like okay, whatever.
well, and I think part of this destruction of innocence um, has to do with the fact that maybe it sounds terrible to say, but kids that are 10 or 11 now are several magnitudes smarter about science and history and physics, genetics than their great grandparents who were first reading these comics. you
Well, that's
know
because you're absolutely right. They're smarter, but they're dumber.
well,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? As in social wise,
social,
because
yeah.
our innocence, as you want to say, like I was saying about banana splits,
hmm
it gives you the foundation to dream, wonder, and question.
well, and I
I mean,
think
like I
that
was giving you the mental differences earlier. I mean, it's the same thing. You see certain characters now, the catchphrase is autistic, but that pause analytical, a lot of the team groups they had as far as Crime Solvers by Hanna-Barbera were exactly like that.
yeah, well, I think that there was I don't know. I don't know how we're going to deal with it. It's like it seems as though each generation loses its innocence a bit faster. And I was talking to some of the millennials at work, and they saw bananas stuff online when it was the Wild West. They saw murders, suicides, um, decapitations. I mean, this is when they were kids, you
Right,
know.
because they looked
I
it up.
When they were kids seeing Two Girls, One Cup. I mean, it's like, oh my Lord. It's like, so if you have that as your experience at 10 versus, you know, 1950s 10-year-old, where your biggest stressor was maybe not cleaning your room enough for when your dad, who's the only one working a job, comes home, you know, uh, and maybe some vague notion of Russia, the early Cold War. That's a lot different than being 10 and seeing people drive a plane into buildings.
Yeah, you're
You,
right.
I mean, so some of the innocence that, you know, different generations have had we've just, some of it's been lost. And now with social media, and not to beat up on social media, there's plenty of enough people beating up on social media anywhere you go. Uh, their kids are finding out some of this stuff super early and becoming already cynical and jaded before they've even started puberty, much less finished it. Um, so, I think that the innocence of a character like Superman, it's going to be real hard to rehab Supes, I think. Marvel works probably a bit better. I think one of the reasons why the X-Men has worked so consistently is that, oppression and sexism and racism and homophobia, those aren't going anywhere anytime soon. And the X-Men have always been able to sort of represent that part of life in the fictional sphere. Um,
Yeah, that's true.
and so no one's going to accuse the X-Men of going woke.
No, they're not.
No one's going, oh, these X-Men, they're so woke. I mean, they've had, gay characters and, all kinds of things super early, for a long time. So, you know, but I think the good news about the X-Men is because they still work within that paradigm, they're not, they're still allowing for wonder to be explored. You can get your slice of reality. Oh, people don't like mutants because they're different. Oh, but look at how cool Storm is. Look how cool Blink is. Look how cool. Oh, they're fighting Mr. Sinister. I mean, you don't have to suspend as much of your belief to still allow the wonder to come in. So I think that's when you get to the timelessness of certain characters, because Superman is struggling, I think, but Batman hasn't, you know, in comparison, and he's just as old.
True, true.
But that's because crime is something that touches people. People know people or have themselves been abused sexually or robbed or any number of things. They've had to deal with mental health issues. And
Which is interesting because the first Superman story in Action Comics #1, he beat a white beater.
sure, sure. And he beat up slumlords. He beat up uh, the rent is too high. The rent is too damn high. That was this, and maybe, and I think that Grant Morrison tried to revisit that during one of the reboots. I don't know if it was the New 52 or somewhere in there where he
I think he
tried to.
did with the 52. He did with
Yeah,
the new 52.
yeah, and so, and but Superman is just so locked into the truth, justice, and the American way. He he's just so unfortunately tied to some things that are dramatically being questioned right now. I mean, whiteness is being questioned, whether it be an expression of white supremacy or imperialism or, privilege. All of these things are being examined. And unfortunately, Superman is the poster boy for a lot of that stuff. Not because of how he was written. I mean, he was written by two, immigrant Jewish writers and artists. I mean, he definitely was not of any kind of white Anglo-Saxon representative, you
No, he
know,
wasn't.
but he became that in the 50s, and his most popular form was that. And because of that, that when that innocence ended, the innocence that, oh, everything that we've done as Americans has always been right. Once that ended, so did Superman's hegemony. So did Superman's power. I mean, everything now we've talked about before with modern age and the anti-hero and everything else. Um, the innocence that Superman represents is really tough to come by, because hope right now is a real tough thing to come by right
I
now.
mean, that's why they need to push so much more because without hope, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we dream in the first place.
Yeah,
Is in the essence of hope. The same reason why we set our alarm clock. Hope
yeah,
you
it's
get up.
the hope of that. And I think so. He's battling not only sort of these uh reevaluations of what you know truth, justice, and the American way actually means. But he's also fighting a society that doesn't have a lot of hope. I mean, the last gasp of hope in society was kind of during the Obama years. I think everything after that, I mean, and not everybody bought into it. There were people mocking it, like, hope, and making fun of the poster and everything else. But that was the last time where it was like, oh, okay, maybe we can make it our way out of it. When you are presented, Donald Trump with Joe Biden, two men who are, you know, fairly old, and, one of which really represents an old way of being, because it's the last gasp of thinking that we, there's never been any mistakes, and America is perfect as it is and just needs to kick some brown people out. Um, yeah, the hope that Soups represents is really feels for people naive, probably.
Possibly.
You
Would
know,
make some sense.
that's too bad, because I think we need it. I think Superman is really someone we actually. I don't know how to rehab him, though. I think you'd have to.
He's not going to go away,
No, I mean
but it's
he's
going to have to change.
no. Well, you know what they could just make it so that it's like. Well, part of the problem is that there's too much reality that has penetrated comic books. And because so much reality is penetrated it, and that loss of innocence has happened, and that suspension of disbelief is so hard to come by, it's really hard to. I mean, like, the first thing most people would ask Superman to do is like solve the Middle East, you know, fix that, so
And they've done that in one of the comics, but then again they were talking about how they couldn't do it in all the comics because first off, he would become an enemy just like Doctor Manhattan became the symbol of world peace. Watchmen as far as everybody found him as a common enemy.
well, and I think that's probably actually, you mentioned a great thing, because I think that is uh something that could rehab him. I think that the way they could rehab Superman would be to simply say he does try to do like a Miracle Man thing or a Rising Stars thing, which always sort of is or the Watchmen thing, where he tries to fix something. And people are, because of the political nature of everything, people are like, why did you do it that way? That would be a perfect story, actually, is he goes to do a thing, and he embroils himself in some very partisan, kind of situation. And he just says, enough, I'm bailing. This is ridiculous. actually tried to do something to save human life, and there are people saying I'm an instrument of oppression. And he just bails. And maybe he just, for 12 issues, he just goes to like the Legion of Superheroes sorts of planets and hangs out. And people are like, "What's up with you, Soups?" And it's like, well, this is what's up with me. I friggin' tried to fix something at Earth, and there were people that didn't like it, and I got beat up for it, and the all the TikToks and all the social media talked about Superman as a tool of imperialist aggression, and I bailed. And
And to
then he,
follow it up,
and
have
then
Zod come in to fill the spot, and then they go, "Oh
well,
my God!"
or he goes on this vision quest, this walkabout basically, and explores all of these things that are in all these different planets, and then comes back and says, no, what I did was friggin' moral, and you human beings were taught me how to be the best of you, and the best of you is not getting swallowed by this violence and things. And then just have him do a Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Denny O'Neil, um, Neil Adams kind of fixing weird social problems here and there. And you could rehab him. And if you get the right artist, the right writer, you could maybe turn it into, oh no, yeah, Superman's a super kind of dude, and yeah, and have him punch some Nazis. Make a stand. Say, sorry, Nazis, you're assholes. You've been assholes for 60, 70 years. You're still assholes. I'm going to punch you. Have a super Nazi fight him. You know what I mean? And
Yes,
who who is behind all of these who is behind actually trying to get rid of him. That would be perfect. Oh my God, that would be a perfect story. A secret super Nazi gets rid of Soups through social media. He bails. He goes on a vision quest throughout the universe. Comes back, says, "No, I was taught to be a good human being by the best human beings. That was the right thing to do. F you." And then the super Nazi comes out and he has to punch a Nazi. Perfect. I could absolutely write that. I could absolutely write that and make that super awesome. So there it is. We fixed Superman. That's going to be in the title. That's going to be in the title of this. I'm going to call it Seduction of the Innocent. Where's the beef? And we fix Superman.
cool, cool.
Well, I guess we're not going to solve it today.
Nope, not today.
Well, anything else?
No, that pretty much was it.
We've covered it. But do you think that would be a good Superman story?
I would read it. I
I
would
think
buy it.
I think that would be great. You'd have to get the best person is like a Dale Eaglesham. Have Dale Eaglesham draw it, and I'd just write it, and I'd be like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Superman's just gonna turns out he's gonna get crucified by social media because he gets seen as a tool of imperialist oppression, and he goes on a vision quest and comes back.
Perfect.
I don't know what would you call it, a Superman for all nations?
No, they already done that.
Okay. Yeah, they've done a Superman for all seasons though, right?
No, we would say Superman. Seeing Superman for the time is now.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. And 12 issue series. And then have it be the reboot, the Superman series, and then it comes back. And then, uh maybe I don't know what you do with Lois though. What do you do with Lois?
She'd be apprised of what he's doing. He'll keep her informed. He'll stay in touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
she
he'll tell the
has
rest of the Superman family to tone themselves down too. That way, nobody has. Well, if he was here, they realize what happens. It'd be basically a wonderful life of Superman not being around.
yes.
All
And
his connection.
And so what you would do, it would almost be like Reign of the Superman. So what you do is you have him go on his walkabout vision quest, and you have all these other people have to arise. And so you have all these tie-ins, and all of these different things. And then, so you start to actually hype some of the Superman family. You get some start actually working on a rogues gallery, because his rogues gallery is garbage, really. I mean,
He's has got some good ones. They just don't know how to use them. I mean, the
no,
Prankster is the best.
sure, Toyman. I mean, he's got a rogues gallery, but I mean, when I think of comic book rogues gallery, and I'm sure you're in the same boat, Batman, Flash, Spider-Man. No one comes
Oh yeah.
close to any of those guys. I mean,
No, you're right.
those guys have the best rogues gallery. There's like 24 individual rogues for each of those guys, where they're just like, oh, iconic. I mean, Batman, you have the Penguin, you have the Joker, you have Two-Face, you have Scarecrow, you have Calendar Man, you have, I mean, there's just so many. Killer Croc, you have, you have so many rogues. Spider-Man, you have the Green Goblin, you have Dr. Octopus, you have the Lizard, you have Kraven, you have Sandman, you have the Chameleon, you have Flash, you have, Gorilla Grodd, you have you have Professor Zoom, you have Mirror Master, you have Captain Cold, you have, I mean, there's just so many
Oh, you're
each
right.
of them has. I mean, each of them you could probably rattle off, I'm sure, 24 for each of those guys that are distinct, powerful, iconic villains. Superman doesn't have that. He has essentially Luthor, and you would just have to get some really iconic people, and you'd have to depower Superman a bit, I think.
You don't have to depower him. You just have to make him more. The situation calls for it. That's the best way to put it. You
Or
know.
like, he knows he could really knock this person out, but he can't, because he's still within this social media bubble of, oh, Superman nearly
Well, yeah,
killed
yeah.
this
Just like
guy.
when he was the burn when they did Man of Steel, burn.
Yeah,
He stopped the bank robbery and there was a girl in there and she's like, "You're not gonna hit a woman." He said, "You're right," and he thumps her with his finger and she's knocked out.
sure. But like, you could do that now, and you would have social media saying Superman's a woman abuser. So I mean, you have him have a very bad day where social media just crucifies him, and he then stops an international incident that is clearly cultural, in some kind of way, that looks like him being exerting an imperialist arm of the American government or something, and then he bails. It'd be super
That
easy
what you
to
say
do.
is perfect.
Yeah,
Very perfect.
well, we've solved it. Well, where can people find you, Terrance?
Drakestorm@gmail.com.
Drakestorm@gmail.com. You can find me at drupq@gmail.com, or that's so quantum@gmail.com. And yeah, we have kind of figured out how our innocence has been lost. Some of the culture vultures and the lore mongers and the anal retentive, continuity freaks. And yeah, and we fixed Superman. There you go,
Yep.
ladies and gentlemen. Can't say we've never done anything for you, and it's free. Free. So, anyways, like we like to say, don't be a stranger.
Just be strange.
We will see you in a week or two.
Hoorah.
Yay! Bye.